and welcome back to Soul Healing with the ETs. What heals our soul? Following the soul contract that it has written for us with the lessons and challenges that our soul wants us humans to experience in this lifetime so that our soul can achieve its learnings and experiences. Whew. Being aligned with our soul's objectives will make our life so much easier, healthier, and bring satisfaction, peace, vindication, and love, among others. This is exactly what has happened to me, and this becomes more and more clear as every day goes by. Our soul has written out our whole life, and with the help of thousands of other souls, is carrying out this huge simulation here on Earth to make its learnings. We are all part of this simulation. Each of us are essentially living in our own play, our own theater production, and each of the main characters that are an integral part of our life are our fellow actors in our production, and they are playing the role that we asked them to perform in the planning rooms up in Soul Land. In turn, we are playing our role as the best character possible in their play. Whew. We are carrying out our role to the best of our abilities to be as real as possible in this simulation. So everything that is happening out there sure looks real, but is a giant play being carried out by highly advanced beings, our souls, that want to learn and evolve in a physical format. And the only way they can do that is by incarnating into a physical being, like a human body, or a dog, or a tree, to be able to make these learnings. Thus, we are all characters. We are all actors in each other's plays. Our souls want to see and experience the adventure filled with challenges that they have scripted for us. Now, it's up to us humans to create the dialogue with our fellow characters that our soul will set us up with. And our souls will find the most unconventional ways of setting us up with all the people that we need to encounter in our play. Now, if ever we don't achieve a lesson, then our soul can reincarnate again here on Earth in another form so that it can obtain that experience because it wants to learn it. So we might as well follow its wishes, as it's going to make our lives so much easier to live, which is being in alignment with our soul's objectives. Now, if we go out of alignment, then life can be very difficult, and sickness, anxiety, and negativity can be omnipresent. Okay, so with that in mind, I've always been an unconventional guy and had an awful time coming out of the closet, but had finally made peace with myself. And I was having a fun and satisfying life with many sexual partners. I was oblivious to having a soul or anything spiritual. I had a great job, and I was in the middle of doing a world tour, which involved having sex with someone born in every country of the world. And by the way, guys, heterosexual people do this too. And I was drinking lots of beer and eating a whole bunch of unhealthy foods. I was playing hockey all the time, and things just kept getting better and better for me, I thought. At the time, I thought that I was simply here to live in this human body and that one day I would die and that's it. But as we have explored in previous podcasts, that's not at all the case. My old roomie had bought me a world map, and each time I would complete a new country, because I treated guys as countries, I would color in his country of birth and was doing quite well in meeting a diverse range of guys. And each time a country was conquered, then I would move on to trying to find guys from different countries, until this young Australian came along. He was new here in the city, and his online profile said that he was 1,000,000 miles of fun. So I figured, what the heck? Why not be with a second Australian? They speak funny, and that can be so charming. Well, turns out that he didn't have anywhere to live, so I took him in for a few nights, and that turned into a few weeks. And I felt my happiness and freedom slowly slip away. I told myself that I would let him stay until he took off to Europe, because he had planned to go to Europe for a couple months, and then I would be free again. That was the first sign that I was starting to live out of alignment. When he took off, even though I missed him a little, I was back to being excited about life and completing my world tour and being with my friends and playing hockey and drinking loads of beer. And then I met this nice Irish guy, and the only way that he could stay in the country was if he would become my partner. And I was there, hey, that's way too fast, man. Like, I can't do that. And then the Australian guy came back from Europe and basically just invited himself back into my place. And we got along fairly well, but I noticed that my inner fire and my independence was disappearing. And one night I woke up in the middle of the night, and he was standing over the bed with his arms on his side saying, "Now that'll be enough." And then I'm there, what? He's there, "You kicked me out of the bed." And I thought it was hilarious and told all my friends, thinking it was funny. But now I realize that was my soul, that was my being telling me, hey, this guy is toxic. Get rid of him. Get him out of your life. He's draining your life essence away. When you're out of alignment with your soul's purpose, you can experience confusion, anxiety, and negativity, and I sure was. I discussed with him about getting an apartment nearby so that we could continue seeing each other, but not constantly be around each other. And then he just started to cry, and he wailed, and it's like, no, then we'll only see each other every 2 nights, and then it'll be every 3 nights, and it'll be every 4 nights, and then we won't be seeing each other. That's a terrible idea. And then he went on to tell me that he'd been running his whole life, and that his father had never loved him, and his mother had never loved him, and his stepfather used to beat him. And he'd been running around the world, and until he hadn't found any stability until he found me. And I fell for this soap opera story and let him stick around. But I figured, I could be a little bit less happy and a little bit less free, but still overall have a good life, even though I don't want to be in a relationship. I can't believe I actually thought that. I remember him going out with friends one night, and I was stuck at home alone, wanting to have a guy over for a sexual adventure, but never did, as I was worried he would find out and his feelings would be hurt. I felt this even though we clarified that we were not having a monogamous relationship, but I still felt guilty. Realistically, though, all I was doing was hurting myself. I was putting his priorities and welfare before mine. That was sign number 2 that I was starting to live out of alignment and starting to live for someone else instead of myself. The next night, I almost broke up with him and didn't because of all the wailing and crying about how he had never been loved in his whole life and how he had finally met somebody that he loved, me, even though I was not at all in love with him. I cared for him, and that was it. But I realized today that the impulse to break it off with him was coming from my soul as I was living out of alignment, and I was becoming less and less happy, but felt obligated to stay with him because of the guilt trap that he had put me into. My soul was trying to get me realigned, but I was not choosing myself. Rather, I was going along with what he wanted so that I didn't have to put up with any more whining and feel sorry for him. Today, I realize that he was playing his role as an actor to the fullest so that my soul could have the learning, the experience. And it was one of the lessons from my soul contract, which I had to transcend. Then off we went to Australia for his brother's wedding. And that was a fun time. But while we were there, he brought up how we should move into our own place together. So that because he and my roommate were not getting along. And I realized today that he purposefully created a wedge between me and my roommate to force a confrontation. Still excited by having been to Australia for the first time and being surrounded by people who talked funny, I thought having our own place might be a good idea, as it would be a clean start for the two of us. Even though I was giving up the place that I loved and the lifestyle that I loved, but heck, I could handle this. So we agreed on this really cool flat on the 18th floor of a nice building. And the moment we moved in, I instantly regretted it. I gave up living where I was happy to be with a guy whom I was not in love with so that he could have stability in his life with a guy who did not love him. How stupid was that? I remember being outside the building with him one morning, and I had to walk away from him because I was having this tremendous anxiety attack over what I had left behind. We patched things up by heading on a super fun trip to Cuba. And of course, all I was really interested in was meeting a Cuban man, and getting drunk. And that's about it. My soul was speaking to me loud and clear, but I wasn't listening. Part of the reason is because I didn't even realize I had a soul. Then he told me that we had to get married so that he could stay in the country. And I asked him, why could he not get his employer to sponsor him? And then he went on in this rant about how that wasn't possible. But yet, I knew quite a few other people who did exactly that and were able to get citizenship. So I agreed that we could become common law partners just to get him off my back. I could not deal with all the whining and all the other shit that he was making up. I flat out refused to get married. I think my soul had my back there. Let us not forget that here on earth, we do have free will. Our soul has outlined our life, but it's still up to us to make the relevant decisions and carry out the scripts. So I realized I was stuck with him. So I tried to make the best out of the situation. But my happiness continued to dwindle. And I was only happy when I was at work or getting drunk or sneaking in a guy for a quickie when my partner was at work, because I didn't fancy my partner at all. About a year later, I put my foot down and said, I'm not happy living up on the 18th floor and we're moving out. I found us a really fun unit in a house on Alexander Street. Alex on Alexander Street, right in the heart of the gay village. What could possibly go wrong? The house had no insulation and we froze in it during the winter. So I said, we're moving out. And then another move ensued with someone I was not in love with. And this time I found us a unit in a townhouse complex, which was pretty cool. And once we were all moved in, I was back to never being happy unless I was at work or getting drunk or having a quickie. My partner would often reinforce how he had never been loved and how he had been beaten as a child and how he had bounced all over the world to find stability to keep me in this control loop. He would tell me all these sad stories from work, but then I would catch him telling me different things. And over time, I realized that he was lying to me. I realized he had created a wedge between my ex-roomie and I so that he could get me alone and move me out of the place that I loved so that he could control me. Years later, one of my older friends would tell me how her ex also made her move into a high unit of a building so that he could exert a greater control on her by isolating her. My partner had done the same thing with me. Mentally, I was heading downhill quickly, and I had started having suicidal thoughts, and how I could not let myself get old like this because he was younger, and the older I would get, he would then gain the upper hand. I dismissed the suicide option as I just couldn't bring myself to do that to my parents. I told myself, hey, if we buy a house in my old neighborhood, then I could be happy again and rent part of the house out on Airbnb, and that would keep me distracted from the real issue, that I was accepting being with a partner who lied to me constantly and who I wasn't in love with, instead of choosing myself and giving myself the right to be happy. We did not get the house, but I found a rental house right next to the one that I used to rent and pounced upon that, hoping to find my happiness again. 4 house moves later, I was finally happier, being in a better location, but still with the anxiety and wanting my full freedom back. One day he phoned me while I was at work, and he told me that I was going to get all upset with what he was going to say. And I almost blurted out, if you want to break up, just say it. I haven't been happy in years. But I didn't say that as I feared an explosive reaction from his part. So he wound up telling me how my best friend, who's actually my soulmate, was no longer welcome and allowed to come to the house. Imagine that. The partner, that I rescued from traveling all around the world to find stability until he found me, telling me that my best friend, my soulmate, all of a sudden could no longer come to the house because of some far-flung, made-up reason that he said something years earlier. Well, at least I did not cave in on that. And then he tried barring another one of my friends from the house, but that friend had already stopped coming over because he didn't like my partner. Point being, my partner was losing control that he had over me. Now that I was back to living somewhere that I enjoyed, so he tried to exert greater control over me by removing my friends one by one. Finally, the pressure got to me, and I knew I could not get old like this, so I broke up with them face to face, man to man. And oh my gosh, it was even worse than I imagined it would be. The next day, I caved in, largely because of all the mental manipulation, like, well, you don't want me anymore. You don't love me anymore. No one has ever loved me in my whole life. And all that shit. So I caved in and we stayed together and we started planning our next trip. We went to Ireland for my 50th. And I guess as long as I had new things to experience and loads of beer to drink, then I would be happy enough in my life. Then we came back and more suicidal thoughts came about. And one night I was out with some friends and phoned my partner to tell him that I was going to stay out a little bit later. And then he responded by saying, well, you can sleep in the guest bedroom. I hung up the phone, turned it off, and slept at my friend's that night, one of the friends who had been barred from my place. And this time I broke it off for good. Point of this podcast: the importance of choosing yourself. I was as happy as a clam living my old life before my ex. But today, I'm even happier. I'm aligned with my soul and my soul's purpose, and my body is in much better shape. And I just can't wait to see what life is going to bring me next. I had a karmic relationship appear as a lesson. More about this in the next podcast. My ex played his role to the best of his abilities. A splendid acting performance worthy of multiple Oscars, which is what we do for each other so that we can each learn the lessons that we set out to learn in our soul contracts. My ex lied to me repeatedly, tried to control me as best he could, made me feel as guilty as often as possible, made me feel sorry for him, put me down when he could. He was a master mental manipulator. That's a triple M. The signs were always there, but I ignored them. My being, my soul, was telling me to break up with him right at the beginning of our relationship. My being kicked him out of bed in the middle of the night while I slept. I knew I was giving up the life that I loved just because this cute guy showed up and played me like a violin. I felt sorry for him and didn't want him to suffer, even though I would suffer. Like, how ridiculous is that? I didn't want to break up with him as I didn't want to have to face an emotional outburst and hear a whole bunch of made up, sad, whiny stories. I became his common law partner just to get him off my back. All I had to do was to choose myself, to give myself the right to be happy. Our soul is here to learn, and it throws lessons at us and challenges to see how we will react and respond. It took me 7 years to learn this lesson. But from our soul's perspective, everything is an experience, and there are no bad experiences. Our soul wants us to be happy. If it sends us a hardship, it wants us to learn and to choose ourselves first. My advice: if you know that you're in any kind of an abusive relationship, or you know that you're being controlled, or you're just unhappy in general, put it out there to your soul and guides. Hey, soul, guides, I need some help here. I want to choose myself and I want to be aligned with my soul's purpose. Show me possibilities of what I can do to rid myself of this situation. Talk it over with your best friend. What kind of strategy you should take to get yourself out of this situation. With my ex, my being was at the end of its rope. I had to make a move, and looking back at this, it was amazing that I let it last 7 years. But heck, some souls can come back to learn the exact same lesson 5, 10, 15 or more years. I resolved it in 7 years, although it could have been just a few weeks. Do you want to go through your whole life being unhappy, knowing that you're being controlled? Your soul wants the best for you, as it wants you to carry out its mission. So time to take charge of yourself and to choose yourself and to give yourself the right to be happy. In my case, the amount of learning has been awesome, and I'm so excited about what is going to come next. I have no fears that I can think of anymore, and I'm at peace, vindicated, happy, and especially I'm aligned with what my soul wants me to learn and experience in this lifetime. Also, my body is functioning better for me all the time. I should do a video about how to love our bodies. I hope this video can be some help to some of you to choose yourselves and your happiness, and that you deserve the right to be happy. Never forget that we are all actors playing a role that our soul asked us to play so that we could learn a lesson and our soul can achieve an experience. We are only here once in this bodysuit, so we might as well be happy and aligned with our soul while we are here, as that's the whole point of being here. To fulfill the journey that we created before we incarnated here on earth. And I'll tell you, I'm darn happy that I finally chose myself. Hey, that's what I wanted to share with you today. I'd like to dedicate this podcast to Jesus. And if you know of anybody who would need to hear this content, please forward it to them. And if you have any comments or questions, or if something similar happened to you in your lifetime, I'd love to hear about it in the comments section. Thanks for tuning in to Soul Healing with the ETs, and we'll see you on the next one.